For decades, Earth watched from the sidelines, quiet, distant, and deliberately neutral. The stars burned with war, but humanity kept its distance. No fleets, no alliances, just a solitary blue planet orbiting an unremarkable sun, surrounded by silence and principle. The Stellar Confederation begged for help. Their war with the Void Hunters had turned desperate fleets shattered, worlds lost. But Earth refused, again and again, until patience turned to arrogance, and arrogance became threat. Admiral Nexus Vorlok, a war-hardened commander of the Drachnary, believed he could force Earth's hand with diplomacy or with fire. But what he didn't know was that humanity wasn't silent out of fear. They were preparing. They didn't build fleets for conquest. They built them for defense. They didn't design weapons for war. They repurposed tools for survival. And as Vorlak's final ultimatum echoed across the Sol system, Earth made its choice. They would not surrender. They would not be conscripted. And if the galaxy wanted to drag them into war, it would regret waking the sleeping giant. The unwanted invitation. Admiral Nexus Vorlok stood before the massive tactical display in the command center of Starbase Omega, watching red indicators spread across the galactic map like a plague. Each blinking light represented a system lost to the Void Hunters, an ancient machine intelligence that consumed everything in its path. The Drachnary military leaders scaled hands clenched into fists as another sector went dark. "Sir, we've lost contact with the Kepler defense grid," reported Lieutenant Zara, her usually steady voice trembling. "That's the 7th major stronghold this month." Vorlak's yellow eyes burned with frustration. The Stellar Confederation had been fighting this war for 3 years, throwing everything they had at an enemy that seemed unstoppable. 57 different species had united under the Confederation banner, pooling their resources and technology in a desperate bid for survival. Yet still the Void Hunters advanced, their black ships cutting through space like death itself. "What's the status on the recruitment drives?" Vorlok asked, though he already knew the answer would disappoint him. "The Zorathi have provided another 2 million soldiers, and the Crystalline Collective has increased their ship production by 30%, Zara replied, consulting her datapad. "But sir, our losses are still exceeding our reinforcements by a factor of 3 to 1. Vorlok turned away from the display, his mind racing through possibilities. The Confederation needed something new, something the Void Hunters hadn't encountered before. His thoughts inevitably turned to the one major species that had refused to join their cause. "Bring up the Sol system files." He ordered. The display shifted to show a small yellow star with several planets orbiting peacefully in space. The third planet, Earth, glowed blue and green in the hologram. According to Confederation records, it housed over 8 billion humans, a remarkably populous and technologically capable species that had somehow remained completely neutral in the galactic war. "Humans," Vorlok muttered, studying the data. Population 8.2 billion, industrial capacity, moderate but growing. Military assessment, minimal space presence, primarily defensive posture. What frustrated Vorlok most was that Earth had the resources the Confederation desperately needed, not just in terms of soldiers, though 8 billion potential recruits would certainly help, but in their unique approach to problem solving. Confederation intelligence had observed human innovations that were both elegant and practical, suggesting a species with remarkable adaptability. "Sir, we've sent 17 formal requests for military alliance," Zara reminded him. Each time, their response has been the same. Vorlok knew the human response by heart. President Elena Vasquez had delivered it personally during their last diplomatic meeting. "Earth appreciates the Confederation's situation, but we maintain our position of strict neutrality. We will not participate in galactic warfare." The memory of that meeting still angered Vorlok. President Vasquez had been polite but immovable, sitting in the United Nations building while her world remained blissfully unaware of the threat bearing down on them all. She had dark hair, intelligent brown eyes, and the kind of calm confidence that came from leading a unified world. But she also had the luxury of distance from the front lines. "They sit in their quiet corner of space," Vorlok said aloud, "growing crops and building cities while the galaxy burns around them." "Sir, perhaps we could try a different approach," Zara suggested carefully. "The humans seem to respond better to requests for humanitarian aid than military alliance." Vorlok shook his head. "We don't need their medical supplies or food shipments, Lieutenant. We need soldiers, we need ships. We need them to understand that neutrality is a luxury they can't afford much longer." As if summoned by his thoughts, an urgent alert sounded throughout the command center. The tactical display flashed red as new data streamed in from the front lines. "Sir, emergency transmission from Admiral Korath's fleet," a communications officer announced. "The Void Hunters have broken through the Meridian line. They're advancing toward the core systems faster than predicted." Vorlok felt his stomach drop. The Meridian line was supposed to hold for at least 6 more months, giving them time to organize a proper counterattack. If it had fallen, then the Void Hunters were now only weeks away from reaching the Confederation's most populated worlds. "Get me a direct line to Earth," Vorlok ordered. "It's time for one final conversation with President Vasquez." The communication established quickly. Earth's peaceful diplomatic protocols still functioning despite the chaos engulfing the rest of the galaxy. President Vasquez appeared on the screen, seated in what appeared to be her private office. Behind her, Vorlok could see windows showing a blue sky and green trees. A scene so peaceful it seemed almost obscene given the circumstances. "Admiral," Vorlok Vasquez said with professional courtesy, "I assume this is about the situation at the Meridian line. We've been monitoring the news broadcasts." "Then you know we're running out of time," Vorlok replied without preamble. "The Void Hunters will reach the core worlds within a month. After that, they'll turn their attention to the outer systems, including yours." Vasquez leaned forward slightly, her expression serious, but still calm. "Admiral, Earth's position hasn't changed. We sympathize with your situation, but we will not commit our people to a war that has been raging for decades before we even knew it existed. This isn't about sympathy anymore, President Vasquez. This is about survival. The Void Hunters don't distinguish between combatants and neutrals. They consume everything." "Then perhaps," Vasquez said quietly, "the Confederation should consider negotiation instead of escalation." Vorlok's temper flared. "You can't negotiate with machines, President. The Void Hunters don't want territory or resources. They want complete assimilation of all organic and artificial life. There is no compromise with extinction." "I understand your frustration, Admiral, but Earth's answer remains no. We will defend ourselves if necessary, but we will not join an offensive war." Vorlok studied the human leader's face, searching for any sign of wavering. He found none. President Vasquez had the same expression he'd seen on dozens of other world leaders just before their planets fell to the Void Hunters. The difference was that those leaders had been trying to surrender. Vasquez was simply dismissing the threat entirely. "President Vasquez," Vorlok said slowly, "I'm going to be very clear with you. The Confederation cannot afford to let 8 billion potential soldiers sit on the sidelines while our people die by the millions. If Earth won't join us voluntarily, we'll have to consider other options." The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Vasquez's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. "Other options, Admiral. Emergency conscription protocols. The Confederation Council has the authority to draft populations from member worlds and protectorates during existential crises. Earth is neither a member world nor a protectorate," Vasquez replied calmly. "No, but you're within our sphere of influence. And frankly, President Vasquez, your opinion on the matter may become irrelevant if you continue to refuse cooperation." Now Vasquez did react. She sat back in her chair, and for a moment Vorlok thought he had finally gotten through to her. Instead, when she spoke again, her voice carried a new edge. "Admiral Vorlok, are you threatening Earth? I'm explaining reality. The Confederation needs your people. We'll get them one way or another." Vasquez was quiet for a long moment, and Vorlok could see her thinking. When she finally spoke, her words carried a weight he hadn't expected. "Admiral, Earth has remained neutral in galactic affairs for a very specific reason. We learned long ago that war brings out both the best and worst in people. We've chosen to focus on the best. But if you force us to participate in your war through threats and intimidation, you may discover that we're not the peaceful farmers you think we are." "Is that a threat, President Vasquez?" "It's a warning, Admiral. Earth wants to remain your friend. Don't make us your enemy." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Vorlok staring at a blank screen. He turned to find Lieutenant Zara watching him with obvious concern. "Sir, did we just threaten to invade a neutral world?" Vorlok walked back to the tactical display, studying the spreading red zones that marked Void Hunter advances. "We threatened to conscript a population that could save the galaxy. Lieutenant, sometimes leaders have to make hard choices." "But sir, forced conscription from a neutral world violates 17 different interstellar treaties. Those treaties won't matter if there's no one left alive to enforce them," Vorlok replied grimly. "Prepare the 3rd battle group for deployment to the Sol system. If the humans won't join us willingly, we'll convince them. Meanwhile, On Earth, President Vasquez sat in her office long after the communication had ended. Through her windows, she could see the peaceful city of New Geneva, where people went about their daily lives unaware that their world had just been threatened by an alien military alliance. Vasquez activated her secure communication system, connecting to key leaders around the globe. Within minutes, she was looking at the faces of her most trusted advisors, Dr. Michael Torres, Earth's leading expert on alien technology, Commander Sarah Mitchell, head of the Solar Defense Force, and General Robert Chen, her chief military strategist. "We have a problem," Vasquez began, and quickly briefed them on Admiral Vorlak's ultimatum. Dr. Torres was the first to respond, his usually cheerful demeanor replaced by serious concern. "Alina, we've been studying Confederation technology for 3 years now. Their military capabilities are far beyond anything we currently field." "How far beyond?" Commander Mitchell asked. She was a pragmatic woman who had spent her career preparing for exactly this kind of scenario, even though most of Earth's leaders had hoped it would never come. "Their standard destroyer could probably take out our entire orbital defense grid," Torres admitted. "Their shields can absorb anything we can throw at them, and their weapons could crack a planet if they wanted to." General Chen leaned forward. "Then we surrender." "No," Vasquez said firmly. "We don't surrender, and we don't join their war. Earth has spent 50 years building a peaceful, unified civilization. I won't throw that away because some alien admiral thinks he can intimidate us." "Alina, with respect, what choice do we have?" Torres asked. "If they come here with a full battle fleet, we can't stop them." Vasquez smiled, and for the first time since Admiral Vorlak's call, she looked genuinely calm. "Michael, you've been studying their technology for 3 years. Have you learned anything useful?" Torres blinked, then his expression began to change. "Well, yes, actually. Their approach to energy management is remarkably inefficient, and their defensive systems are designed primarily to counter other Confederation technology. But we're talking about adapting civilian technology for military use. Even if we could modify our systems, we'd need time." "How much time?" "Months, at least. Maybe years." Commander Mitchell cleared her throat. "Actually, we might have more options than you think. The lunar mining operations have been using some pretty impressive industrial lasers, and our orbital manufacturing platforms could be converted to produce defensive systems fairly quickly." "How quickly?" Vasquez asked. "If we started now, maybe 6 weeks to get basic systems online. 3 months for a comprehensive defense grid." Vasquez nodded. "Do it. Start immediately, but keep it quiet. I want Admiral Vorlak to think we're still the helpless farmers he believes us to be." General Chen looked skeptical. "Alina, even if we can mount a defense, are we really prepared to fight the people who are supposed to be protecting the galaxy from this Void Hunter threat?" "Robert, they stopped being protectors the moment they threatened to conscript our people. If Admiral Vorlak wants to discover what humans are capable of when we're forced to fight, then we'll show him." Dr. Torres was already pulling up technical specifications on his tablet. "I'll need access to every piece of Confederation technology we've acquired through trade agreements, and I'll need our best engineers working around the clock." "You'll have whatever you need," Vasquez promised. "Sarah, what's the status of our fleet?" Commander Mitchell consulted her own device. 12 orbital defense platforms, 36 patrol vessels, and the prototype heavy cruiser Genesis. "Not much against a Confederation battle group, but if Michael can work his magic with the technology upgrades." "I can," Torres said with growing confidence. "Alina, you need to understand something. The Confederation builds their technology to fight other Confederation species. They follow predictable patterns, use standard frequencies, and rely on established tactics. But humans... we don't follow any of their rules." Vasquez felt a grim satisfaction. "Then let's teach Admiral Vorlak why Earth chose to stay peaceful. Not because we're weak, but because we know exactly how dangerous we can be when we're not." 3 weeks later, Admiral Vorlak's third battle group entered the Sol system. 27 warships, including 3 heavy cruisers and a command vessel, emerged from hyperspace expecting to find a defenseless world ready to surrender. Instead, they found something that would change their understanding of humanity forever. The war Earth had tried to avoid was about to begin, and the galaxy would learn that sometimes the quietest neighbors make the most dangerous enemies. The terrible mistake. Admiral Nexus Vorlak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Constellation's Pride, as his battle group emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. The massive dreadnought sensors immediately began scanning the inner system, cataloging the human defenses that intelligence had assured him would be minimal. Report, Vorlok ordered, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. Lieutenant Zara studied her console with growing confusion. Sir, I'm reading. This can't be right. What is it, Lieutenant? Sir, the lunar colony appears to have been militarized. I'm detecting massive power signatures and what look like industrial mining lasers repositioned for orbital defense. Vorlok frowned. His intelligence reports had mentioned Luna as a small mining and research facility. How massive? Each laser array is generating approximately 40 terawatts of focused energy. Sir, that's more than some of our ship-mounted weapons. Before Vorlok could respond, his communications officer announced an incoming transmission from Earth. President Vasquez appeared on the main screen, but she was no longer sitting in her peaceful office. Instead, she stood in what appeared to be a military command center, surrounded by displays showing defensive positions throughout the solar system. Admiral Vorlok, Vasquez said, her voice calm but carrying an unmistakable edge. I see you've decided to ignore Earth's neutrality. President Vasquez, I'm here under Confederation Emergency Protocol 7. Your system is being placed under military protection while we establish conscription procedures. Vasquez smiled, and Vorlok felt an unexpected chill run down his spine. Admiral, I gave you fair warning 3 weeks ago. Earth wanted to remain your friend. You chose to make us your enemy. President, 27 Confederation warships against a few mining lasers and patrol boats is hardly a fair fight. Surrender now, and we can proceed with minimal disruption to your people. Admiral, you're absolutely right. This isn't a fair fight. Vasquez paused, then added quietly, it's not fair to you. The transmission ended, and immediately Vorlak's tactical officer called out an alarm. Sir, massive energy spikes throughout the system. The lunar installations are powering up, and I'm detecting movement from the asteroid belt. Vorlok moved to the tactical display, watching as dozens of new contacts appeared on his screens. What his sensors had dismissed as mining equipment and cargo haulers were revealing themselves as something entirely different. Those aren't mining ships, Lieutenant Zara breathed. Sir, those are warships. Dr. Michael Torres sat in the command center beneath the Atacama Desert, coordinating the defensive systems he had spent 3 weeks frantically preparing. Around him, dozens of technicians monitored displays showing the positions of Vorlak's fleet and Earth's hidden defenses. Lunar base report status. Torres spoke into his headset. Dr. Torres, this is Lunar Controller, came the reply from Commander Janet Walsh. The mining facility's converted military commander. All 48 mining arrays have been repositioned and upgraded. We're reading full power and target lock on the lead enemy vessels. Torres smiled grimly. The industrial mining lasers that had been designed to cut through asteroids had been relatively simple to modify for military use. Human engineers had always built their tools to be adaptable, and what could cut rock could certainly cut alien armor. What about the manufacturing platforms? Torres asked. Online and fully operational, replied Captain David Kim from the orbital shipyards. We've produced 68 defense drones using hybrid human Confederation technology. They're small, fast, and very angry. Torres had been particularly proud of the defense drones. Using captured Confederation shield generators and human missile technology, his team had created weapons that could match alien firepower while being too small and numerous for the aliens. Traditional tactics to counter effectively. Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt, Captain James Hawk Morrison prepared his converted mining vessel for combat. The ship had started life as a simple cargo hauler designed to collect minerals from the belt's countless rocks. Now it bristled with weapons that Torres had cobbled together from mining equipment and alien technology. All units, this is Hawk. Morrison spoke into his radio. Remember, these aliens think they're fighting peaceful miners and farmers. Let's show them what angry miners and farmers can do. Morrison's ship, the Dirt Devil, was the prototype for Earth's new approach to space combat. Instead of building massive warships like the Confederation, humans had converted their existing civilian fleet into a swarm of smaller, more maneuverable vessels. Each ship was unique, modified by its crew using whatever materials they could. Find Hawk, this is Sally, came a voice from another converted ship. My fusion torch is running hot, and I've got mining charges loaded in all 6 tubes. These aliens picked the wrong day to mess with Earth. Back on Vorlak's flagship, the situation was becoming increasingly confusing. His sensors were detecting energy signatures that didn't match any known technology, and the human ships were moving in patterns that defied standard military doctrine. Sir, the lead human vessel is approaching at maximum velocity, reported his tactical officer. It appears to be ramming speed. Vorlok stared at the display in disbelief. They're going to ram us. That's suicide, sir. I'm detecting massive energy buildup in the ship's front section. It looks like they've converted a fusion torch into some kind of weapon. Before Vorlok could respond, Morrison's ship swept past the Constellation's Pride at point-blank range. The converted fusion torch, normally used for propelling ships through space, unleashed a focused beam of stellar fire directly into the dreadnought shields. The alien shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, had never been tested against the raw power of a fusion reaction. They overloaded instantly, leaving the massive ship's hull exposed. Shields down, Zara shouted. Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. Vorlok felt his ship shudder under the impact. How is that possible? Their technology is primitive. Sir, they're not using primitive technology, his science officer called out. They're using our technology, but modified beyond recognition. That fusion torch is generating temperatures equivalent to a stellar core. More human ships swarmed around the Confederation vessels, each using tactics that seemed designed to confuse and overwhelm. They didn't fight in formation or follow predictable attack patterns. Instead, they moved like a pack of predators, striking from unexpected angles and using weapons that shouldn't have existed. Commander Sarah Mitchell watched the battle from her command post on the Genesis, Earth's prototype heavy cruiser. The ship had been designed as a peaceful exploration vessel, but Torres's modifications had turned it into something the Confederation had never encountered. All weapons ready, Commander, reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Robert Stone. Target the enemy command ship, Mitchell ordered. Fire the resonance cannon. The resonance cannon was Torres's masterpiece, a weapon that used Confederation technology against itself. By analyzing the frequency patterns of alien shields and hulls, human engineers had created a weapon that could literally shake enemy ships apart from the inside. The invisible beam struck Vorlak's flagship, and immediately every metal surface on the ship began to vibrate at its natural frequency. The effect was devastating. Bulkheads cracked, systems failed, and the mighty dreadnought began to tear itself apart. Evacuate the bridge, Vorlok shouted as control panels exploded around him. All ships, fall back and regroup. But the Confederation ships found themselves trapped. The lunar installations had created a crossfire pattern that covered every escape route, while the swarm of converted human vessels harassed them from all directions. Every time they tried to focus their fire on one target, 3 more would appear from unexpected directions. Dr. Torres monitored the battle from his underground command center, coordinating the defense with the calm efficiency of an engineer solving a complex problem. Lunar base, target the cruiser on the left flank. Mining crews in Sector 7, prepare to release the asteroid swarm. The asteroids had been Torres's stroke of genius. Using mining charges and guidance systems, his team had turned dozens of space rocks into guided missiles. They moved slowly compared to conventional weapons, but they were massive, numerous, and nearly impossible to destroy. Captain Morrison laughed as he watched alien ships trying to shoot down house-sized chunks of rock. That's what you get for attacking miners. We know rocks better than anyone. His ship had taken damage from alien return fire, but human engineering philosophy meant that everything had multiple backups and redundant systems. What would cripple a Confederation vessel was merely an inconvenience to ships, built by people who expected things to break in hostile environments. Hawk, this is Sally, came the radio transmission. I've got 3 enemy fighters on my tail, and my main engine is down. I see them, Sally. Hold course and prepare for emergency acceleration. Morrison's ship swooped behind the pursuing alien fighters, but instead of firing weapons, he activated his mining grappler. The magnetic beam, designed to collect metal asteroids, latched onto the nearest fighter and simply dragged it along behind Morrison's ship until the alien pilot lost consciousness from the Admiral Vorlok found himself in an impossible situation. His superior technology meant nothing when faced with humans who refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. They used mining equipment as weapons, converted civilian ships into warships, and employed tactics that no military academy in the galaxy would consider remotely sensible. Sir, we've lost 6 ships, Lieutenant Zara reported from her emergency station. The humans are using some kind of weapon that makes our hulls vibrate until they break apart. And sir, added another officer, they're broadcasting music during the battle, something called rock and roll. Vorlok felt a headache developing. The humans weren't just defeating his fleet, they were humiliating it. His sensors showed that they had somehow converted garbage collection drones into guided missiles. turned asteroid mining lasers into orbital defense systems, and modified their fusion drives into weapons of mass destruction. Sir, incoming transmission. From Earth, his communications officer announced. President Vasquez appeared on the screen again, still standing in her command center. Behind her, Volok could see displays showing his fleet's positions and the systematic destruction of his forces. Admiral Volok, Vasquez said calmly, "I'm prepared to discuss your surrender." "My surrender?" Volok sputtered. "President, you may have caught us off guard, but the Confederation has thousands of ships. This is only the beginning." Vasquez smiled again, and this time Volok recognized the expression. It was the same look he'd seen on the faces of successful predators, just before they struck their final blow. "Admiral, you misunderstand. We're not interested in stopping with your fleet." Before Volok could ask what she meant, his long-range sensors detected something that made his blood run cold. Human ships were emerging from hyperspace throughout Confederation territory. Dozens of them, all converted civilian vessels that had somehow acquired faster-than-light capability. "You see," Admiral Vasquez continued, "Earth has a very extensive merchant, marine, cargo ships, exploration vessels, scientific research craft. They travel all over the galaxy, and they've been quietly observing Confederation military installations. For years, the tactical displays showed human ships appearing near Confederation bases, supply depots, and shipyards. Each ship was small and seemingly insignificant, but Volok now understood that small and insignificant meant nothing when dealing with humans. "We know where every one of your fleets is stationed," Vasquez said. "We know which bases are critical to your war effort, and we know exactly how to destroy them using tools you never considered threats." Volok watched in horror as reports flooded in from across Confederation space. A human garbage scow had somehow destroyed a major shipyard by converting its trash compactor into a gravitational weapon. A scientific vessel had disabled an entire battle fleet by releasing a swarm of modified research probes that interfered with alien navigation systems. President Vasquez, Volok said desperately, "The Void Hunters are still advancing. If you destroy the Confederation military, there will be nothing left to stop them." "Then perhaps," Vasquez replied, "you should have thought of that before. You threatened my people." The transmission ended, leaving Volok alone with the wreckage of his invasion fleet and the growing realization that humanity was not the peaceful, harmless species they had pretended to be. There was something far more dangerous. Engineers with a grudge and an unlimited supply of industrial equipment to convert into weapons. As his flagship continued to shake itself apart under the influence of the resonance cannon, Volok finally understood President Vasquez's warning. Earth had wanted to remain the Confederation's friend. Instead, they had made humanity their enemy. And that, Admiral Volok was beginning to realize, was the worst mistake the Confederation had ever made. When the sleeping giant wakes 6 months after the failed invasion of Earth, Admiral Nexus Volok sat in a detention cell aboard a human vessel, watching through a porthole as his homeworld of Drachnos burned in the distance. The sight filled him with a mixture of grief and horror, but what truly terrified him was the methodical precision with which the humans had orchestrated this moment. The ship he was on, the Retribution, had started life as a human agricultural transport designed to carry grain between Earth's farming colonies. Now it served as the flagship of Captain James Hawke Morrison's raiding fleet, bristling with weapons that no engineer in the galaxy would have thought to combine. Morrison entered the cell, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the kind of casual work clothes that Volok had learned to fear more than any military uniform. The human sat down across from the Dragnari Admiral and offered him one of the cups. "Drink up, Admiral," Morrison said with false cheerfulness. "It's going to be a long day." Volok accepted the coffee with trembling hands. Over the past months, he had learned that humans were at their most dangerous when they were being polite. "Captain Morrison, surely we can discuss terms. The Confederation is willing to negotiate." Morrison laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Admiral, 6 months ago you threatened to conscript 8 billion humans for your war. You told President Vasquez that our opinion on the matter was irrelevant. Now you want to negotiate." Through the porthole, Volok could see more human ships in the distance, not the sleek warships that other species built, but converted civilian vessels that had been transformed into instruments of terrifying efficiency. Cargo haulers had become troop transports, mining ships had become mobile weapons platforms, and scientific vessels had become electronic warfare specialists. "The Void Hunters are still advancing," Volok said desperately. "Without the Confederation military, they'll consume the entire galaxy." "Maybe they will," Morrison replied, sipping. His coffee, but that's not Earth's problem anymore. You made sure of that when you decided we were too dangerous to leave alone and too weak to resist. Morrison activated a portable display showing tactical information from across the galaxy. Red markers indicated Confederation military assets under attack, while blue markers showed human forces systematically dismantling the infrastructure of galactic civilization. You want to know what your real mistake was, Admiral, Morrison continued. You thought we were farmers and miners who happened to live on a nice planet. You never bothered to learn what kind of farmers and miners we actually are. The display showed footage from various human operations. A team of agricultural engineers had converted their crop-dusting aircraft into precision strike vehicles, using their knowledge of pest control to develop weapons that could target specific alien biology. Mining crews had turned their expertise with explosives into an art form, bringing down Confederation battleships with precisely placed charges that exploited structural weaknesses. Humans are problem solvers, Admiral Morrison explained. We look at challenges and figure out solutions using whatever tools we have available. You presented us with the challenge of fighting the most advanced military in the galaxy, so we solved it. Commander Sarah Mitchell had spent the morning coordinating humanity's largest offensive yet, the simultaneous assault on 12 major Confederation worlds. From her command center aboard the Genesis, she watched as her forces carried out operations that would have been considered impossible by conventional military thinking. Phoenix team report status. Mitchell spoke into her headset. Command, this is Phoenix leader, came the reply from Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos, who was leading the assault on the Confederation's primary shipyard. We've successfully infiltrated the facility using converted waste management vehicles, beginning demolition sequence now. Santos and her team had spent weeks studying the shipyard's layout, identifying the critical points where carefully placed explosives could bring down the entire structure. They had approached the facility not as enemy soldiers, but as maintenance workers making routine deliveries. Understood, Phoenix. Hammer team, what's your status? Command, this is Hammer leader, replied Major Chen, who was coordinating the attack on a Confederation communication hub. We've gained access using modified atmospheric processors. The aliens never expected maintenance equipment to be weaponized. All primary communication arrays are now under our control. Mitchell smiled grimly. Human tactics had evolved far beyond what any military academy would recognize as warfare. Instead of direct confrontation, they used deception, improvisation, and an intimate understanding of how civilized infrastructure actually worked. Excellent work. Both teams, proceed to Phase 2. Dr. Michael Torres had become something he never expected. Earth's most wanted war criminal, according to Confederation broadcasts. From his mobile laboratory aboard the converted research vessel, Prometheus, he continued developing the hybrid technologies that were systematically dismantling galactic civilization. Doctor, we've finished analyzing the captured Confederation AI cores, reported Dr. Jennifer Walsh, his chief assistant. Their programming architecture is remarkably rigid. They're designed to follow established protocols without deviation. Torres nodded, studying the data on his screens. That's what makes them vulnerable. Jennifer, can we create a virus that forces their systems to implement Earth standard efficiency protocols? Walsh grinned. Already working on it. When their AI systems try to optimize using human efficiency standards, they'll overload their own power grids. The aliens built everything with massive safety margins. They never expected someone to deliberately push their systems to maximum theoretical capacity. This had become Torres's specialty, turning alien technological superiority against itself. Confederation systems were designed to last forever and operate safely under any conditions. Human systems were designed to work as efficiently as possible for as long as necessary. When Torres applied human engineering principles to alien technology, the results were devastating. What about the shield generators we captured from that battle cruiser? Even better news, Walsh replied. I've figured out how to reverse that polarity. Instead of keeping energy out, we can make them keep energy in. Any ship we hit with the modified shields will cook itself with its own power output. Torres had learned that the key to fighting advanced civilizations was not to match their technology, but to understand it better than they did. Humans approached alien devices as puzzles to be solved rather than sacred mysteries to be preserved. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Captain Morrison was conducting his own form of warfare. His fleet of converted civilian ships had become the terror of Confederation space, appearing without warning to strike at targets that should have been impossible to reach. Hawk, this is Sally, came the familiar voice of his longtime partner, Captain Sarah Sally Rodriguez. "I've got visual on the Confederation supply depot. Looks like they've upgraded their defenses since our last visit." Morrison studied the tactical display from his position aboard the Retribution. The supply depot was surrounded by automated defense platforms and protected by energy shields that could stop a fleet of conventional warships. "What do you think, Sally? Can your old garbage hauler get through those defenses?" Rodriguez laughed. "Hark, these aliens still think garbage is garbage. They never bothered to scan what's actually in those disposal containers." Her ship, the Clean Sweep, had been a waste management vessel before the war. Now it was humanity's most effective infiltration platform, capable of approaching any target under the pretense of routine maintenance while carrying enough explosives to level a city. "Approaching the depot now," Rodriguez reported, requesting permission to dump waste in their recycling facility. The Confederation automated systems, programmed to maintain efficient resource management, automatically granted permission, had no way of knowing that the waste Rodriguez was carrying consisted of self-assembling demolition charges disguised as compacted garbage. "Permission granted. Sally, have fun." Admiral Vorlok watched these operations unfold from his cell, each successful human attack driving home the magnitude of his mistake. The humans weren't just winning through superior firepower or tactics, they were winning through a fundamental misunderstanding of what warfare actually meant. "You see," Admiral Morrison explained, refilling Vorlak's coffee cup, "the Confederation builds everything to fight other civilized species. You follow rules, maintain protocols, and fight wars the way wars are supposed to be fought. But humans don't fight civilized wars, we fight to win." The display showed footage from Rodriguez's mission. Her disposal containers had released their contents throughout the supply depot's recycling facility, and the demolition charges were now spreading through the station's infrastructure like a virus. Within minutes, the entire complex would be reduced to debris. "This is impossible," Vorlok muttered. "Your species was peaceful. You had no military tradition, no warrior culture." Morrison's expression darkened. "Admiral, you made the same mistake everyone makes about humans. You thought peaceful meant harmless. But peace is a choice we make, not a weakness we suffer from." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from Earth. President Vasquez appeared on Morrison's display, speaking from what appeared to be a war room filled with tactical displays and military advisors. "Captain Morrison, I need a status report on Operation Homecoming." "Proceeding on schedule, Madam President," Morrison replied. "We've neutralized 70% of Confederation military infrastructure in this sector. Resistance is minimal." Vasquez nodded. "Excellent work, Captain. It's time for the final phase. Admiral Vorlak's ship will serve as our messenger." Morrison turned to Vorlok with a smile that made the alien's blood run cold. "Admiral, you're about to deliver humanity's terms to what's left of your government." The final assault on the Confederation capital world was unlike anything in the history of galactic warfare. Instead of a massive fleet engagement, it was conducted by a single human vessel, a converted passenger liner called the New Horizon. Captain Torres, Dr. Michael Torres's brother, had volunteered for what everyone assumed would be a suicide mission. His ship carried no weapons and minimal defenses, but it did carry something far more dangerous. A message from Earth. "Confederation home defense. This is the Earth vessel New Horizon." Torres broadcast as his ship approached the heavily defended planet. "I'm requesting permission to land and deliver a diplomatic message." The response came from Admiral Kethron, the highest-ranking Confederation officer still in active command. "Earth vessel, you are in violation of our territorial space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." "Admiral Castran, I think you should hear what I have to say first," Torres replied calmly on his display. Torres activated a holographic projection showing the current state of Confederation space. Red markers indicated the destruction of hundreds of military installations, supply depots, shipyards, and communication hubs. Blue markers showed human forces in position to destroy the remainder. "As you can see, Admiral Earth currently controls most of your military infrastructure. We've been very careful to avoid civilian casualties, but we've systematically dismantled your ability to wage war." Catherine's four-armed form appeared on Torres's screen, his expression a mixture of rage and disbelief. "Impossible. The Confederation military has existed for 1,000 years. You cannot destroy it in 6 months. We didn't destroy it, Admiral. We simply demonstrated that your military exists only because we allow it to exist. And now we're offering you a choice. Torres transmitted, a document that outlined Earth's terms. The Confederation could continue to exist, but only as a purely civilian organization focused on trade and diplomacy. All military assets would be transferred to human control, and Earth would assume responsibility for defending Confederation space against external threats. This is surrender, Catherine said flatly. No, Admiral. This is an opportunity to survive. The Void Hunters are still advancing, and now they're your problem again. Earth will protect the civilian populations, but we'll do it our way, using our method. The transmission ended, leaving Catherine to contemplate an impossible choice. His sensors showed that the human ship was completely defenseless, surrounded by the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. Yet somehow, Torres seemed utterly confident that he would be allowed to leave unharmed. The answer came when Catherine tried to target the Earth vessel. Every weapon system on the planet's surface suddenly turned toward the sky and opened fire, not at the human ship, but at Confederation military targets. The planet's own defenses had been compromised, converted into weapons that served Earth's interests. How, Catherine whispered. His question was answered by his own science officer. Sir, it appears that Earth vessels have been visiting our worlds for years, conducting what we thought were routine maintenance and supply operations. They've had access to every major system in Confederation space. Torres's voice came over the communication system one final time. Admiral, Earth tried to stay out of your war. You forced us to join it. Now you get to live with the consequences. As the New Horizon departed, Catherine realized that the humans had never intended to conquer the Confederation. They had simply demonstrated that conquest was unnecessary when you could control everything that mattered from behind the scenes. 3 months later, Admiral Vorlok stood in the ruins of what had once been Confederation military headquarters, watching human engineers work to convert the facility into a refugee processing center. The Void Hunters had accelerated their advance once they realized the Confederation military no longer existed, and billions of displaced civilians were fleeing toward the Galactic core. President Vasquez stood beside him, no longer the peaceful leader who had tried to avoid war, but the architect of the most successful military campaign in galactic history. Was it worth it, Admiral? She asked quietly. Forcing us to become warriors instead of farmers. Vorlok watched human soldiers distributing food and medical supplies to Confederation refugees. These were the same people who had dismantled his military, yet they were now working tirelessly to save the lives of their former enemies. I don't understand your species, Vorlok admitted. You fight with a brutality that terrifies every civilization in the galaxy, yet you show more compassion to your enemies than we showed to our allies. Vasquez smiled sadly. That's because we remember what we were before you forced us to become what we are. Earth didn't want to be a military power, Admiral. We wanted to be gardeners, teachers, builders, but you taught us that sometimes the only way to protect the things you love is to become something you hate. In the distance, human ships continued their work of evacuation and defense, protecting civilian populations while hunting down the last remnants of Confederation military forces. They had become the galaxy's reluctant guardians, a role they had never wanted but now could never abandon. The Void Hunters will reach the core worlds within a year, Vorlok said. What happens? Then, Vasquez looked up at the stars, where human vessels moved like guardian angels through the darkness of space. Then the galaxy will discover what happens when you force farmers to become soldiers. Admiral, the Void Hunters think they're dealing with the same civilized species they've conquered before. She turned to Vorlok with an expression that was both compassionate and terrifying. They're about to learn the difference between fighting civilized species and fighting angry humans with unlimited industrial capacity and absolutely nothing left to lose. As if summoned by her words, reports began flooding in from the galactic rim. The Void Hunters had encountered something they had never faced before, a species that treated war not as a formal engagement between militaries, but as a problem to be solved using every tool available. Earth had tried to stay out of the war. The galaxy had forced them to join it. Now everyone would live with the consequences of awakening the sleeping giant that had preferred to tend its garden in peace.